Senator Souza, you have in the past tried to bring forth bills regarding nonpartisan versus partisan for some of this, like NIC and various other agencies or elections. And as I recall, you've been pretty well shot down for that. Are you going to continue to try to do so? This is brought up because we have that issue going on right now, as you may have seen in the newspaper.
Thank you for that, Don. I think maybe your memory is not as clear. I did have a bill that succeeded after 3 years of getting through to move school trustee elections for the elementary schools, K through 12 system, to move those school board trustees to their elections from the obscure date in May that they were over to the November election. And I had to compromise. I wanted them on the big election, which would be the presidential and state level elections in even years. But we could not get that done because of the county clerks, because the clerk's office wouldn't be able to deal with all of the complicated boundary lines that are involved in those types of elections. Although in the future, with technology, I think that will change. So we compromised with them and we said, let's move it to the November election on odd years, which is the city election, just so people we would have a bigger turnout, which we have. So that was the bill that I worked on. The trustees for NIC are already, and this was one of the points that I made consistently when I talked about the K through 12 trustees, is that our community college trustees are on this even year election. But we couldn't get it was really the county clerks that slowed up the problems. And not incorrectly. I mean, they really have a very big challenge with all of the districts. If you think about it, we have precinct lines, we have district lines, we have legislative districts, we've got congressional districts, and so what the ballot that each person gets, the ballot that Jim gets is a highway district or a trustee district or and it gets very complicated, and then I come in and I say, well, I live across the street, well then you might get a totally different ballot. So it's very difficult for the county clerks, but that will change with some of the new technology that's coming in.
Thank you. It is noon o'clock, but we did get a bit of a late start, and I have 3 questions here that I suspect an awful lot of us are wondering about. So if you don't mind, I will ask these questions of our legislators. And if you need to boogie, go ahead. So this is for all of you. I'm going to put all 3 questions together. And would you vote in favor of making vaccines for Idaho children, quote, recommended versus currently mandatory with exemptions? Or can you, as a legislator, make a public commitment to do everything in your power to prevent a COVID vaccine from being mandated to the Idaho public? And can you strengthen our right to decline vaccines and any chip without limits on going to school, shopping, or working, or being in the public? Mary.
Thank you for that. And I have been thinking that the 8 points that I told you and we went through separately, that the Senate recommends that we as a legislature look at this next session and change. The 9th one, and I told you there was a 9th one that I wanted to add in, and that is preserving our current vaccine exemption. Our law, we have a law right now that says that every adult in Idaho has the right to exempt themselves out and their children from any vaccine. And that is in law right now, but I think that we need to strengthen that and say it will never be changed. And I actually, if we wanted to add that into a constitutional amendment, I would think that that would be a good idea.
In the interest of time, I'm just going to agree with Mary. The way we have it now works very well.
And I would like to comment, that's a great concern of mine, vaccinations. I don't know how many of you have seen that there's a couple of movies out, Vaxxed 1 and Vaxxed 2, well worth seeing. There's some real concerns with vaccinations. The government's been subsidizing this. This whole COVID thing, I don't know how much we all know about vaccinations. I don't personally know a lot. However, we can't vaccinate for the cold virus. We can't, viruses are always changing. So suddenly we're going to come up with this magic pill for this so-called COVID virus, and viruses you can't vaccinate for. So I'm not sure what this is. I do know there are some other things in the works that I'm sure everybody else here is aware of as well. So yeah, that's a big fight. It's coming to Idaho. And there again, the way these things work as a federal government, that's the real concern. This federal election is incredibly important, but the federal government chops off the money if we don't comply. So that's a concern. Idaho hopefully will stand. Historically, I've been here 8 years. Usually we don't. When the money gets threatened, then we tend to capitulate. So hopefully we'll do better. But that's a big issue. We all need to be paying very close attention to this and make your voices heard. But it's a real threat.
So, sounds like a 10th Amendment issue.
If you don't know how I would vote on that, shame on you.
Of course, I will echo that. I will stand against any mandatory vaccinations at all in any case, whether it's COVID or any other high priority governmental, no way, give me a break. And yet, they could scare us all into decide. Yeah, all I have to do is start killing people falling dead right beside you, all over falling in the streets. Wouldn't we all just clamor for a vaccine then? But as Representative Mendive's saying, how are you going to vaccinate? It's a virus. Enough said.
I have always voted against mandatory vaccines and will continue to do so.
I stand with Representative Tony. There's no way. And we've all been asked that question, but what if people were dying beside you? And what if, I never thought that they would close down the churches. I never thought that any of these things would ever happen, okay? So it will surprise you if COVID-20 comes next. That is hardcore, okay? Which we've been warned about, that has a 25% more threat rate, okay? And so if that happens, and you see people dying around you, then all they're gonna tell you is, it's if you take the flu vaccination, don't you? Now they're gonna say, it's just a flu. Well, we've been trying to tell you that forever, but now you're gonna say it's a flu. So a lot of people say, no, I won't do it, no, I won't do it, but remember, they're gonna turn it into something to where the end of this, and if you go on to the WHO 201 and you listen to that 18 hours of video, at the end of it, starts with the Communist Party, okay, and saying what they want to do. But the end of it was our dear Mr. Gates that stood up. And he gave his prediction on this whole thing. And the bottom line is they want you to vaccinate so much that we have to ask, why do you want me to vaccinate? So bad, okay? So would I have you do that? No, absolutely. I'm not gonna be there. So I don't know why I'm responding. But I will contact every one of you if you ever do that, remind you what you just said. Because we need to say absolutely no on any mandates that they try to give to us or our children, or to try to take our children. And part of that, if I could add, a part of that is the threat to our children, that if you don't do this and you have it and your children in the home, then now health and welfare under health, which is why this mandate even came across us, okay, then we have the right to take your children and everything. I have told my congregation, by the way, I think there's only 3 here from my congregation, so that's good, yeah. 4, 3, 4. I have told our congregation that if there's one person in our congregation that ever gets their children taken for any such thing, I will have 1,000 people sitting on the steps of that
And just a quick ending comment. I do have some friends who I mentioned vaccinations. They got a little bit weird about it. I thought we were on the same page. However, what I told them, and I believe this to be true, if the vaccination actually works and you have it, then you have nothing to worry about. If I and my family do not get it, then we're going to die off and you'll be just fine.